Good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today I'm joined by an extremely special guest. I'm here with Tia from Tikyjo's YouTube channel. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Tia.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Tia, and I am from Tikyjo, the YouTube channel. So really excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Mackenzie. I'm just super excited to start talking about some games and share them with you guys.
Fantastic. So I'm sorry, what is your YouTube channel's name? I guess I've been
Oh,
mispronouncing it forever.
I know. This is the thing. Like everybody I meet is like, is it this? And it's always some different iteration. But I think of it as Tikyjo, but I guess it doesn't really matter. It's really just a made up name. So
So cool. It's a nebulous definition. So I like it. Nebulous pronunciation. Super cool. So what kind of things do you do on your YouTube channel on Tikyjo?
Yeah, I just started the whole YouTube journey just, I think, less than 2 months ago. So it's been really exciting. Most of the content is centered around solo board gaming. And I'm someone that, compared to like a lot of the people that I know in my area, has a little bit out there in terms of my taste in games. So I really like supporting those designers and those games that maybe don't have as bright of a spotlight on it. And yeah, luckily my partner has a lot of like the top 100 BGG games. So that frees me up to just go and find like random little games that are kind of out there. So a lot of it is that I do solo things. I've been doing some tutorials as well and things like that. But yeah.
Awesome.
Solo gaming.
I remember that when we first started talking, you had some solo recommendations for me, and some I had never heard of, some really obscure button shy games, some just really fascinating titles. And recently, if you were going to watch a video, I would honestly probably start with her top 10 solo games. I think it's a good kind of swath of her just gaming idea and who she is as a gamer, and just see if your tastes align. I think it's a great showcase, a great video. Fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, and by the same token, I actually picked up Bullet after seeing your video, and I've been really enjoying it. So
yes.
Thanks for the recommendation on that one.
That's great. I'm so happy to hear that you're liking that game. I love it. More stuff is constantly coming out. It's quick. The soundtrack, have you listened to the soundtrack at all?
I have, yeah. I use it every time I play. And I haven't ventured into trying to play it solo timed yet, but I think that's going to be my next venture, even though that's not like kosher with the rules. But
there is
super fun.
A solo mode that is timed. It's like a score challenge, so you're not actually fighting against the bosses. But that is probably the hardest mode, I think, is actually the solo timed one where it's the score challenge. You're gonna lose eventually. It just like keeps on piling on, and so it's about even lasting one round longer than you did the previous time is like a huge feat. So super exciting. I'm really happy you're enjoying that. But that's not why you're here to hear us talk about our new games we're getting, but we're talking about the games. Well, I guess we're actually talking about this. So we're talking about our favorite new to us solo board games this morning. So these are games that we are really loving right now. So these are games that we've recently entered our collections and that we are having a blast with. So who knows where they're going to end up on our top 10 solo board games of all time. But right now we are loving these games. Anything else you want to add before we start, Tia?
No, that sounds good. I'm ready to talk about games.
All right. So, Tia, I'm going to have you start us off. What is the game that you're loving right now? What's your number 5?
So this one was actually released quite a few years ago, but it hasn't been available in the US to date, which I'm hoping changes because it's an awesome game. And that is Lux Aeterna. So this is designed by Tony Boydell, and the art is by Alex Lee. It's got kind of a retro space vibe, which usually isn't my thing, but the game is really fantastic, and the presentation's great. And essentially, it has multi-use cards that you're going to be assigning. You're trapped in space and trying to repair your ship. So some of the cards, you'll be able to play one for energy towards your ship. One will move you closer to the black hole each round, and then one will give you a unique ability. So between the cards, you're going to be drawing them and assigning them. Speaking of real-time games, this is one that it's recommended to use like a 10-minute timer to kind of emulate that idea of being in space on a time crunch because you have limited oxygen. And this is a really fun one that I finally found like a little shop in Belgium that was selling it, and the shipping wasn't too awful. So I just took the plunge because I've been wanting to try it since it was announced at Gen Con a few years ago. And I'm very, very glad that I did, for sure.
Whoa. So So the initial pull-in, what was the thing that actually grabbed you initially? Because this package sounds great, multi-use, real-time, solo.
Right, yeah. I think the thing for me, like I said, I do enjoy sci-fi themed games or space themed games, but that's not usually my go-to. The thing for me was really the multi-use cards. I absolutely love that in games. It's primarily a card game. In fact, the only component other than the cards are these dice and a couple little chits just to mark your position in space relative to the black hole. So I really enjoy games with small footprints, and the fact that it had a timed element, I love that as well. So the fact that it plays in 10 minutes is great. I often try to play board games in between, transitions of my day, or if I'm at work on my lunch break. So the 10-minute element to that as well was really attractive to me personally.
I love it. Totally with you on the multi-use cards. It adds just a lot of thinking, and when you're playing solo, you have time for that because it's always your turn. You're not waiting on anybody. Love it. So this is a great pick, Tia. So number 5, Lux Aeterna. Cool. All right. So my number 5 is brand new to me, but it's one that I get recommended constantly because it doesn't appear on any of my lists. Any guesses what I'm talking about here? Can you hear me okay, Tia?
Oh, yep. I think it cut out for a second, but we're back.
All right. So number 5 to me is a game that is new to my list, so one that I've just been starting to dive into, but it's one that I get constantly recommended, and this is going to be Sprawlopolis. So Sprawlopolis, I'm also going to go ahead and throw in Agropolis as well. So they both finally delivered on Kickstarter, but I shouldn't say finally. They have a pretty good track record of delivering things on time with Button Shy. So they arrived on Kickstarter, and I have been enjoying them so much. These are, like you said, very small footprint games. It's a pack of cards. You can use a nice extra gum pack if you want to store it with sleeves, but you definitely don't need to. But this game is a blast. It's one that I've had a lot of fun with. It's a quick little puzzle game where you're matching these terrains, very similar to the game Circle of Wagons. This one is only cooperative, though, and solo. And I really enjoy the flow of this game. It's got all these neat symbols, and the expansions are fun and easy to introduce. We played with the beach one most recently because we were over down in Florida, so we thought it'd be thematically appropriate to pull that one out with the beach. But the game itself is cute, it's small, and it's variable as all get out. So the brilliant thing of this game is the objective system. On the back of each card, you're going to have objectives, and each objective, you're only going to pull 3 of them a game, and it's going to drastically change what your scoring condition is, as well as what you are going to be doing throughout the game, and the score of the opponent as well. So I think that is just super cool. I love that system. I think they did a great job. Yeah, have you played this one, Tio?
Yeah, absolutely. This one was actually my first venture into Button Shy's line of wallet games. A friend of mine introduced it over coffee one day, one summer, and I was just immediately, my mind was blown. Like you said, the objectives on the back of the card, so that you have 3 new objectives each game, but it still stays within that 18-card micro game footprint, just blew my mind. And that was kind of what got me into microgaming, actually.
Really?
And micro games. Yeah. So this was one of the first ones that I actually found or was introduced to. And like you said, I think the rules are easy enough to kind of come by for people who might be newer to gaming as well. I think it's a really good introduction since it's cooperative, and it has some similar elements to some more popular games, maybe even like Carcassonne, that have tile laying and connections of roads and things. So I think this is a great game for people who are very well versed in gaming, but also to bring newer people into gaming as well. So yeah, this is one of my favorites of their line for sure.
Awesome. So I found this one very thinky, because when you play it, you have to keep all those scorings in mind, and there's that negative points. So I feel like the solo is really well done here. Once again, you have that time to think, so it really reduces the amount of pressure on you. So I really like that. The other thing I really enjoy is actually in Agropolis. So Agropolis is like the farm version of this game, and it uses animal pens, and so some of the areas have animals, and I love it because it can make this scoring so interesting. It's like per pen that's next to an orchard. And it's cool. I really like it. Very similar feels. I think if you're going to get one, probably just stick with Sprawlopolis. I think it's perfect for what it does. Lots of different expansions in Sprawlopolis to go with, but I think Agropolis is an also awesome step if you enjoy it. So I would recommend both. Any other things to add?
Oh, I was going to say, I believe, I haven't tried it personally yet. We have Agropolis as well, but we haven't played it. I believe that there's a variant where you can combine the two in some form. I don't know if you've tried that or looked into it, but I had heard rumor.
Yep. It's so funny because the expansion's name is called Combopolis, and it just sounds hilarious. So here it is here, Combopolis. Yeah. Lovely. But yep, you're totally right. So have not tried this one yet, but I'm working my way through the expansions.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I'm excited. There's all sorts of fun stuff. Cool. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to our number 4s. Tia, what are we talking about next?
Sure. Well, speaking of button shy wallet games, I have John Belushi's Antinomy. And this is originally a 2-player game. But they recently released a solo variant for it. That's just a little expansion of, I believe it's like 5 or 6 cards. So this is another 18-card micro game. And throughout the game, you have these different cards that you are trying to create a paradox with by getting 3 of the same color, 3 of the same number, or 3 of the same symbol. So they have different symbols of feathers and skulls and different things like that. The numbers are ranged from 1 through 4. The catch is that in order to do that, you have to move either into the future or the past from your line of cards. And so based on the back of the card, you have a codex of one type of color card that you're not allowed to use to form the paradox. So in the 2-player game, you're essentially trying to form more before your opponent, and there are clashes and things like that if you end up on the same point in the time continuum. However, for this one, for the solo play, you are trying to accumulate that many before you have these other cards clog up your line of cards. So instead, you may get a card that doesn't have a color, which you can't use, or you may get a card that only has 2 numbers. So essentially, you're trying to create those paradoxes and escape kind of that realm before you the timer runs out and you're unable to make combinations based on the cards that are left. So I've been really enjoying this one. Like I said, this is a small 2-player game that's been in my collection for well over a year now, but the solo play came out a little bit more recently. And with these games, I always feel, I don't know, Mackenzie, if you've had the same experience, but with these games, I typically feel like, oh, you know, it's just some colors and some shapes and some numbers. How hard can it be? But I find that this one is really engaging and is really like a little brain burner, especially in the solo mode. It feels very puzzly.
That's actually my favorite design type, is when somebody is able to take something like a couple of symbols, a couple of numbers, and create something really compelling and really thinky with rewarding decisions. And what you just described is wild. So I love it. Like you said, I'm looking at cards with numbers and colors, and you just described this really interesting system. So this sounds really cool. Oh, man. All right, you know, I'm trying to get to that $20 shipping on Button Shy, so this might be the one that pushes it over.
I know. And the thing is, too, I don't know if this is 100%, but true as of right now, based on the climate. But I know, like, some people on my channel have said, these games look cool, but they're not available in my country. I believe that Button Shy offers, like, $50 free international shipping. So it's like a good option if you're in the States. Like they have a very low threshold because the games are so small for shipping to qualify for free shipping. But I think internationally as well, based on your location, that's like a good option too. And a lot of their games as well, they have free print and play files. I'm not sure if Antinomy does, but I know some of their other ones do. So that's like an option too, just for accessibility. And because they're so small, it's like, if you can find access to a printer, you literally only need like 1 or 2 pages to print out for the cards, which is awesome.
That totally makes sense. So I guess later in the stream, we can go take a look and just, you know, confirm your suspicions. Because I imagine that I don't know about your collection, but there may be some more Button Shy games. I don't know. I know you're a big fan of the line.
Yeah.
Sweet. So let's go ahead and go to my number 4. So my number 4 is going to be another extremely popular solo game. And this is one that I finally got. It was tied up in a pre-order forever, where they eventually refunded me my money because they just couldn't get a copy of it. But, oh, now that it's here, it's so fascinating. I'm pretty garbage at it, but man, if it isn't fun with the different placements, this is going to be Under Falling Skies. So Under Falling Skies it won Best Solo Board Game on the BGG Awards. I imagine that it is one of the most well-loved solo games in a while. It's built for solo gaming, and it is a blast. So Under Falling Skies has you playing as you're a city, and in that city, you have these executives that are going to help you out. And the whole idea is to stave off this alien invasion long enough so that you can research their weaknesses and defeat them and repel them. But the way it's done is through this very interesting dice placement system where you're going to take your workers, put them on a space, and they fall down that many spaces. But the die determines the strength of the action. So you obviously want to play high numbers, but if you do, it's going to suck because they're going to get advancing on you. And so it's all about determining when that risk reward is and what numbers need to go where, and you have to use each column. So it's really, it's so cool. And my favorite thing in this game has to be the dice placement itself. The dice are very cool workers. And the way they work is you have 5 colored dice, and the gray ones, they don't do anything when you play them except take the action like normal. But the white ones, it's very simple. You play the white one and you reroll all the other dice. And that's such a good mechanism. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It makes so much sense. It gives permanence to your actions. You can't go back. Oh, I love it. That is such a good system. And you're trying to be like, okay, I need this number, but I'm going to lose these numbers, but I need to risk. Oh, it's so good. I was so surprised at how good this was. I shouldn't say I was super surprised, but because everybody else loves it, but I was so happy that it was good. Oh, love it, love it, love it. I know that you have so much content on this game, Tia, so tell us what your opinions are. Do you love Under Falling Skies?
Let me think. I mean, space game, not really my thing, but yes, absolutely. I love the game. It's so fantastic. And this is actually one that was also a print and play back in the day. And it was submitted to like Board Game Geek's micro game contest. And that's when I first heard about it from a friend. After a few failed attempts with my printer, I got really frustrated. But luckily around that time, CGE announced that they were going to publish it with Kwanchai Moria's art, which I'm a big fan of his artwork on games. So I thought, I'll just save it. I'll pre-order and I'll see what it is when it gets out. And like you said, the dice manipulation, it has that kind of Yahtzee feel where you get your 2 rerolls, but based on when you use your white dice. So it's like an upgrade to that mechanic, making it feel a little bit more fresh. And one of the things that I had heard once I had pre-ordered it was that the game felt a little too random with the die rolls. But one of the things that I found very quickly was that, like you were saying, with placing the dice, you do have a lot of control with your rerolls, but also the fact that all of the dice can be good or bad based on where you place them. Like a 1 is not necessarily better than a 6 because a 1 gets you limited resources in your base. However, it also means that the alien ships that are descending are only going to descend 1 space, whereas a 6 gives you a lot of power, but the aliens are going to be coming much faster and damaging your base. So I just thought that the game was really well balanced. There are a lot of good choices. And even for a game that's primarily based on die rolls, it feels like there's a lot of control from turn to turn, which I was over the moon with, because if there's one thing that there's one thing that turns me off from a game is when it feels too lucky or too random. So this one does a really good job of mitigating that, both with just how the dice operate and then also with, like you said, the re-rolls with the white dice.
Yeah, we're here to play games. So the fact that we have like so many options with a single die is lovely. I love it. And Michael Newman agrees with us. Newsom, he says that it looks like an incredibly cool system. It's awesome, Michael. If you got a chance, try this one. It's wonderful. So it's just getting reprinted now. It's back in stock. So this is one that you can get at your local online store, maybe at your local game store. Jump in. It's wonderful. It also has a campaign mode that is awesome. It's got comic illustrated art. It's got this great system where you're going to be kind of going from city to city. Love this one. I'll go to you got to try this one. It's great. Love it, love it, love it. Sweet. So let's go ahead and jump into our number 3s. What are we talking about, Tia? What is your number 3?
All right. So departing from the space theme that we've had so far, we're going to go kind of the opposite direction. So this is Peter Sylvester's Village Green, published by Osprey Games. And Village Green is one that wasn't on my radar. It was actually given to me as a gift because my friends know that I really enjoy card games. And so they thought, oh, this one's kind of right up your alley. And it was one that I probably, had I seen pictures of it, wouldn't have looked much more into because it's a card game with, garden art. It's very pretty looking. But I was thinking again, there's always that chance of, oh, it's like a smaller card game. There might not be a lot of depth. This one, however, is really, really excellent. So during the game, you are going to have a grid of 4x4 cards. The outside border are going to be made up of these purple-backed awards cards, which have unique scoring objectives. So like this one is an award for symmetrical forestry. Every 2 birch trees, oak trees, or willow trees, you'll get 2 points. And this is going to apply to the row or the column that you place it in. In the center, in a 3x3 grid of those award cards, you're going to have these green kind of garden cards. And those are going to have different symbols. Like this one, for example, has some different trees on it that would score. So essentially, you're trying to line up your awards with your cards. But then there's another catch. Speaking of just having like colors or numbers or shapes, in the top of your green cards, there's actually a symbol of a type of flower and a color. So based on that color and flower, you can only place them adjacent to each other. So like red flowers can only go next to red flowers unless it's like a red lily. You can put a red card, or a purple lily, or a yellow lily. So it has to match in either the color or the shape of the flower that you're placing. So it makes for some really interesting decisions. And yeah, I have to say this is one of the ones that typically when we get new games, because we're getting a lot of new games very quickly, we'll play it once or twice and then kind of move on to the next game and come back to it later. But this is one that we've played multiple times, and the solo play for it is really, really excellent. It kind of captures the essence of the multiplayer game, but in a very appropriately challenging way, I would say.
This is cool. This reminds me a lot of obviously the gameplay is completely different, but the look of it reminds me a lot of Arboretum, where you're building this thing in front of you, but your scoring's not in your hand, it's on the board. So I feel like the placement in this one is more restrictive, but also probably more rewarding. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And that was my first thought as well in playing it. I am a huge fan of Arboretum, like back from the old Z-Man publishing days. And it was one of my most played games, but I would always get really nervous about whether or not I'd be able to score my trees based on what I have left over in my hand. So it was like one of those things where I'm like, I love the feel of the game, but I hate those last few rounds before the end where I'm like, I've built this beautiful Arboretum. I don't know if I'm going to get any points. So this game kind of, like you said, flips that around so that it's harder to place your cards, but you for sure are guaranteed on what you will be scoring at the end of the game, which for me relieves a lot of tension and stress, which I'm not always down for, especially in a beautiful garden type game. So I think, even if you really enjoy Arboretum, this is another one that is similar, but way different enough that, like, for me, I love having both in my collection for sure. And plus, solo play, hello, which I'm not sure. There might be a variant for Arboretum on solo play, but
I think that tension, and that's the reason I like Arboretum at least, is that pain and agony. It's one of those games where it's simple, but it hurts. And I really like that in games. I don't know if a solo could capture that. I think it's short enough that I don't think it quite needs one. But this looks great. This is a great suggestion. Wow. So just from a random gift, that's awesome.
Yeah.
When people give you gifts that are games, are you usually excited or kind of like, oh my gosh, this could be bad? Like, how do you feel?
When people give me gifts that are games, I'm struggling to remember a time when a gift wasn't a game. But yeah, I'm usually really excited. Like I said, even if a game isn't the most well-designed game, I'm really excited to explore new ideas and new designers and things like that. So I'm always looking for something new that I've never seen before. It's kind of like, for me, especially smaller games like this one, it's kind of like sampling little pieces of candy, And it's like, ooh, okay, that was really sweet and that was fun. And, I'm not too bent out of shape if it's not the best game, because it's usually a fun experience playing it and then just kind of dissecting and discussing like, oh, how could it be improved? Or, I like this element. What if it was paired with this mechanic instead? So I always find it to be a fun experience for sure.
I really appreciate your extremely positive outlook on this. Normally, I'll ask people to just not get me games because usually it shows up like, oh, I have to learn this, and then I have to play it, and then I'm gonna want to play it multiple times, and then if it's not good, I'm gonna feel really bad when I get rid of it. Oh, because geez.
Yeah. I always have a reserve list of, I'm like, if you don't know what to get me, here's a list of games. Or if you find something that you think I would enjoy, then just get it for me. So yeah.
That's another problem is if there's a game that we need, I just get it immediately. I'll pay the premium. I'll go to Belgium and pay the extra money. Oh, geez. David, he has got a comment for us. He just says, thanks so much for the stream and sharing opinions. Thanks for joining us this morning, David. I really appreciate you being here. So stick around. We still got a bunch to talk about. And let's go ahead and jump into my number 3. My number 3 is one that I love so much. Oh my gosh, this is one that I'm finding myself playing a lot. I'll leave this one on the table for a while. And I'm jumping around with the different characters and trying out the different systems involved. The action cube system is wonderful. This is number 3, Chronicles of Drunagor. So Chronicles of Drunagor is a gigantic Kickstarter game. It is one of the most challenging boxes I've tried to condense, and I've failed spectacularly at. It probably takes up the most shelf space. Oh my gosh, it's huge, but it is so fun. Chronicles of Drunagor is a dungeon crawling game, and in this game, you're going to take a set of heroes. I mean, it's as basic as you get when it comes to a dungeon crawling game. But the coolest part here are the actual characters. So each character has this huge layout in front of them, and this layout is just riddled with effects. And so it's a lot to look at when you initially start playing. But once you jump in and once you're familiar with the system, it's like, oh, I know exactly what this does. And the best part is your actions are tied to specific colored cubes, and those cubes represent different things. Blue is magic, green is agility, red is range, and yellow is combat. And when you play, you're going to be assigning those cubes, and once the cube's there, it's stuck there until you've basically fatigued yourself and you have to recall them. So you're having to be very cautious and selective with the things that you're playing, and the effects are so fun. And that's my favorite part of the game, are the bombastic and interesting effects. Each character is completely different. You've got characters like, I was playing this fire mage recently, and his whole thing was he was super frail, super fragile, but he could burn people. And a lot of his effects would have to do with reapplying burn damage. So he would burn you for 4, and he had this upgrade where you could make it so you lose your immunity to fire. And so he could burn even like fire demons. It was so awesome. So I love this whole system here. I'll just kind of show you what a page would look like for, oh, not this guy. Let's see. Oh, no. Maybe in a bit. But the whole customization of this game is also really cool. Every time you finish a mission, you're going to be able to increase something on your board, whether it be learning a new skill, getting some new cubes, or if it's going to be a passive ability, or it's an item, and you have lots of choice when it comes to this. Like a lot of the times you're drawing like 7 cards for picking an item. You have a stack of like 10 options for abilities that you're going to pick from. And the cube system is just fun. It's cool. It's fast. The turn order is very quickly. The game is simplified and streamlined, and I think that's really well done. It does have a couple hiccups with a lot of dungeon crawlers have with kind of like the setup time, but it doesn't front load that, so it's easy to jump into the game, which I think is really nice. But it's a good system. It's a great system. It's one that I'm enjoying a lot. I'm like 10 missions in on this, and I'm having a lot of fun with all of the different variety. Favorite character right now is probably I like the cursed characters, because there's a mechanic in the game where the more damage you take or the more darkness that has touched you, you're going to be filling up your board with curse cubes. And so you're limiting your options. And if you get so many curse cubes, you die and the game's over. But these curse cubes, the like shadow people, the more curse cubes they have on their board, the stronger their attacks and stuff are. So you're like kind of pushing the limit of, you're super limited on your options, but you're also having a blast with being able to use really fun powers. So that's my number 3, Chronicles of Drunagor. Have you heard of this one? Have you played this one? Do you enjoy dungeon crawl style games?
So I've definitely heard of this one, and I always have to stop myself and just like shut my laptop lid anytime I see a new Kickstarter that's like high fantasy and dungeon crawling, because those are the things. Like I've been saying, oh, I don't mind space games. I like pretty flower games, but this is like, this is the genre that I would probably just go all in on every single game that came out if I didn't like have to physically stop myself. So this one looks really awesome. It's one that I didn't know too much about before now, but I'm definitely like, it's definitely on my radar. And obviously it plays solo. Is there a multiplayer version of this as well? Is it cooperative, competitive, one versus all? How does that work?
It's everything. So it goes from 1 to 5 players, which is
Okay.
kind of insane. So
Yeah.
the solo is good. Sorry, the solo is great. I like it a lot. So the solo is great. You can play with up to however many characters you want because it is cooperative. So if you want to mix and match characters, you can. The difficulty is scalable. You can increase the difficulty of the monsters, but there's also a one-shot mode where you can play cooperative, or you can play one versus all, where one character is going to be controlling the bad guys. And so you have lots of choice here with what you're going to be doing. And I think that really opens up a lot of possibilities. If you are interested, if this is one that you're going to pull the trigger on, there is a Kickstarter. It's not a Kickstarter. It's a GameFound, actually, that's going to be next month. That is for the expansion and a reprint of the base game.
Ooh.
So if it is one that you are interested in, they're going to be addressing a lot of the concerns. They are going to be adding some things that can increase the kind of variability of the AI. So it's not as simple. So if you do want to increase that, you can. Lots more classes, lots more cool things. And I was actually recently featured on their GameFound page. So I thought that was really cool. So I'm on their review list on the bottom there. So I can't deny that this game is great. That customization is just so fun. And the characters are a blast. They're all very generic fantasy, but unique in the way they play and unique in how they use the system. And I think that makes for great asymmetrical abilities is how do they use the system and are they fun? So it's great. So if you're going to jump into a fantasy one, I think this one's pretty awesome. So I like it a lot.
All right. I'll just, I just opened it up on the tab over here real quick.
If you hit, what is it, notify me on launch, you get like a free expansion. So that's kind of cool.
Free stuff, guys. Let's go.
Awesome. So we also have some new viewers. We have Lemuel here. He is enjoying our topic today. He's got to catch up, but he'll play from the start. But thanks for joining us this morning, Lemuel. We appreciate you having you here. So awesome. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our number 2s. Tia, what do you got for me?
All right, so this is Welcome to Dino World, which was designed by James O'Connor, David Turksey, and Nick Shaw. And this one, I think the art is by Sabrina Miramon and Beth Sobel, who I know a lot of people are really enjoying her art these days. So I figured I would mention that as well. And this was published by Alley Cat Games. So I have like a minor addiction to roll and write games. And if you're over on my channel at all, that's pretty apparent, or to ever talk to me, that's pretty apparent, I think, off the bat. This is one that's really interesting. It came out a few years ago, and it basically, you are creating a dinosaur theme park, so not dissimilar from the Pandasaurus games. But in this one, you're going to be creating like a different grid where you're going to be placing different dinosaur pens. But in addition to that, it has that danger element where you have to place generators and roll for danger at the end of each round. So based on the number of generators and the number of connections of pens that they are fueling, your park becomes a little more dangerous. Dinosaurs can escape. They can terrorize other dino pens, which can cause them to rampage and escape. So it's a really fun take on that kind of theme of having a dinosaur theme park. And the different like variable dinosaurs and things like that are really cool. This is one that I've had for a little bit of time, for a couple years now, but I most recently tried the solo play. And essentially in the solo play, or in the base game, you are drafting you're using 3 dice each round. In the solo play, you're going to be drafting from a pool of 4 dice. And then the die that you don't use will be placed on an Autonoma card, which will show a type of dinosaur symbol that the Autonoma player will get, as well as some other symbols for generators, for safety in the park, and some other things like different buildings, which will give you different scoring objectives and things like that. So I found the drafting to be really interesting for the solo play. It felt similar to drafting for Paper Tales, which is like a card drafting game with solo elements, in that whatever you don't take will determine what the AI is. So it has that really nice tension of, okay, I could take the 3 dice that are best for me. However, that's not usually how drafting works, right? Because you want to take something away from your opponent and not give them the best thing for them. So it causes you to make some compromises on what you do take, which is like really tight drafting that I personally enjoy. And this one, I think, implements it really well. So yeah, that's Welcome to Dino Worlds.
So I have actually played this game, and I played this game before it was officially released in a print and play. So my friend London introduced me to this game. He was part of Gen Cant during, I think it was 2016 when it was originally published. So very similar to Under Falling Skies, where this game was so well loved as that print and play that somebody picked it up and published it. And David Turchi, as you said, he added a solo mode and he made it just, oh, that's so awesome. That's so cool. I'm so glad you're talking about this game because this came out before Dinosaur Island and Dinosaur, the Duelosaur Island and any of the expansions. And I actually prefer this one over those games. I find this one is a little bit more compact. I love the actual creation of the park. I feel like I'm actually making it in this one. It's great. I think, oh, this is a great choice, Tia. So awesome. How'd you hear about this game?
Yeah, this was one that similarly, I was looking through different print and plays, and it was actually during the time that it was on Kickstarter and everything. So I found that there was a print and play, looked into what people were saying and how they were updating it for the actual published version. And I got really excited over it. And I greatly admire anybody who's brave enough to put their game out there for free for people to sample. I think that's just such a great way to get your game out there. And it really speaks to kind of the integrity of the designer to say like, hey, I just am passionate about this. I want to share it with people. And if people like it, maybe we'll publish it and that will be great and we can improve on it. I think that's such a fantastic model for making games these days and making them accessible. And so I always have a little bit more faith as well when you have a sample of the game first and you can see that it's not that the Kickstarter or the publication is not the first draft, which I know those games go through many, many drafts, but it's cool as a consumer to be able to see that process a little bit and understand more in depth kind of how the game has evolved. So this was one I heard about a while ago. And again, at the time I was really jonesing to pick it up. The Kickstarter had already closed, but I ended up ordering it from Alley Cat Games directly from overseas because I also wanted the solo play autonomous
promos, right? You got to
yeah. There are extra objectives, so you can. Oh, and that's the other thing is the objectives in this game are really cool because it's kind of similar to again like Paper Tales or Seven Wonders, where you're competing on the people right next to you. So you can play up to, it says up to 75 because that's how many sheets are in the game, but you can ideally play with more. And you're competing to complete these objectives more quickly. So there's some extra objective cards. There's an aquatic dinosaur expansion. There's an aviary expansion where those dinosaurs act differently and interact with each other. So I was really keen on getting everything for it because it seemed like a really fantastic package. And yeah, I'm very glad I have it and very glad I finally got to try the solo play.
That's excellent. I find myself falling into that same category as you, where I'm like, but can I get the expansion if I buy it at the discounted price? I'm helping out the publisher. I'm giving the money to them directly. This is just good for everybody, right? So, and I have to agree with you as well when you said that you really appreciate being able to try the game beforehand. I love that this age we have access to things like Tabletopia and all these things that you can use to try a game before you back it. I love that people use them. It's something that's commonplace now is you can try beforehand. So I love that is a step we're taking towards. So cool. Let's go ahead and jump to my number 2. This is going to be Lost Ruins of Arnak. I'm just going to say it. This is another extremely popular game, nominated for Spiel des Jahres, it won Best Medium Game of the Year on Board Game Geek Awards recently, and it was tied up in that same pre-order with Under Falling Skies, where they just couldn't get it, or I don't know what happened there, but they refunded me the money. Life is good. Got it play. Wow, this is a great game. It's not anything like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing in the world. It's like wearing a nice pair of jeans or wearing your favorite shoes. It uses a lot of mechanics that that you are enjoying, but it streams them together in something that you're really going to enjoy. So at its heart, Lost Ruins of Arnak is a deck building game where you're going to be crafting this hand of cards. And when you do that, depending on the type of card you get, you're either going to, if it's a relic, play it immediately and use its awesome power, or if it's an item, you're going to put it on the bottom of your deck. And so that when it comes around to you later, you're going to be able to use that card in a future round. There are some cards that can pull things from the bottom of your deck, but ideally you're kind of setting up for the future. So you have lots of choices here in the way you're building your deck because it's all about either prepping or getting that immediate benefit. So the game is relatively short for this deck building style, where you don't have that long to actually utilize these cards. So the game actually kind of changes and updates with you, where every time you buy an item, at the end of each round, the item market gets smaller because frankly they're just not as useful anymore because you're not going to have the time to use them. And I love that system. And that's just the deck building aspect, where you have the cards that are immediate or you have cards that you're prepping for. But the other cool part is it is a worker placement game as well, but you only have 2 workers, so the placement is very tight. And a lot of the times you're going to want to be exploring with these workers, and that involves you going to spaces where you're not sure what the results are going to be. You'll flip over the tile, and based on what it says, you're going to get something. And you have all of these things that you're hoping for, but a lot of the times you're just going to have to adapt because you're not sure exactly what's going to come out and what you're actually sorry about that. You're not sure what's going to come out and what the results of your exploration are going to be. It's exactly that, exploration. And to tie it all together, you have this large research track that you're going to be spending most of your resources on to jump up, because they are a lot of points, a lot of immediate rewards, and it's a way that you can get assistants that are going to give you passive or a bonus ability. So like I said, nothing incredibly earth-shaking or new here, but it's so well done. It's a beautiful production. The gameplay is so streamlined, and the gameplay works extremely well. Now, the reason it's on this solo list is because I think the solo play is so good. It has printable modular difficulty. It also has this brand new printable campaign, which really changes up the feel of the game. Like in the first campaign, you're actually restricted on how high you can go up on that research track based on how much you're exploring. So it forces you to take really uncomfortable actions, which I think is super cool. So I love the huge amount of variety that's in the box. I love the variety of expansion content specifically for solo, which I think is awesome. Like, all the expansion content is for solo right now. And I just think this game has a lot of room to grow, but it's also one that I'm really enjoying right now. So like I said, it's one of my favorite new to me games. It's one that I'm loving right now. So it's got to be on this list. This is my number 2, Lost Ruins of Arnak.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is one that obviously when it came out, the gorgeous art caught my eye. The theme seems really cool. And I heard deck builder, I heard worker placement, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. This was one that I think a lot of people just looking online were also posting about a lot. And for me personally, I always try to ask, what's that one thing that kind of makes it stand out? And similar to what you were saying, Mackenzie, everybody was like, I don't know, it's just a good game. So I was always like, well, I don't know. Like, do I need to pick this one up or not? Maybe I'll wait and see. But I like the way that you explained how it was just like a pair of good jeans. It just fits. Everything feels good. It's comfortable. You're like happy. That sounds like a really awesome time. And I think, I wouldn't say that there are a whole lot of games that combine deck building and worker placement in the way that it sounds like it's being described here. So I feel like that's kind of one of those standout elements of just not maybe new mechanics, but putting things together that normally don't go together, possibly.
And that's a lot of where game design is. It's about refining and combining mechanics and making them work and making new, interesting games that you want to jump into. And I think it does it really well here. So I'm a big fan. Have you played this one yet, or did you stay away from it because of that?
Right.
Nothing special.
I haven't played it yet. I was looking into purchasing it. I know a friend of ours has a copy of it, and we were thinking about maybe playing it so I could get my feet wet and see if it's one that I really want to dive into. Recently, I saw there's like a Board Game Geek hot deals page where they post, if stuff's free or on a really good sale. And I know the publisher had put out some of the solo stuff. Mm-hmm. I think maybe for free or discounted, just like a little sample for people to try, which got my attention for sure. And that was pretty recently. So it's one that I've been kind of hemming and hawing over, but I haven't tried it yet. But based on today, again, I'm just gonna have a bunch of tabs open by the end of the stream.
I'm sorry for your wallet. Don't blame me.
It's okay.
So all the solo content for this is print and play, and it's all free.
Gotcha.
So you don't have to pay for any of it. And the expansion here for the campaign story mode, it's a 4-chapter campaign, and it's the Search for Professor Cudel. You can either print it or you can just run an app. So you can pick how you want to run it. So if you don't really like apps in your game, you can just print it. But you have choices here, which I think is really cool. So they simulate event cards, and all you'll need to play the campaign are some extra like small tokens. They represent like story markers essentially. So each scenario will use them differently. But yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it's awesome. They're continually supporting this game. It's been out for about only like 7 months, so I guess it's not been out super long, but I see it getting expansions in the future. This has been a heavy hitter, and with all those awards and accolades, I can't imagine they're going to not support this game. So that's my number 2, Lost Ruins of Arnak. So now here it is, the big one. What is the game that you just can't get enough of, Tia? What's Oh, I'm so excited.
All right, so to build the suspense as well, this is a game that originally was published back, I believe, in 2017 by Porta Games, and it's one that I had no idea about, literally saw it on a shelf in the middle of nowhere while I was visiting a friend at grad school, and of course we went to a board game store, because why not? Picked it up, played it, and I have a very hard time rating games a 10 on Board Game Geek, just because in my mind, that's like an ideal that can't be reached, right? That's like the perfect situation. But this is a game that the original printing of it, I felt comfortable rating a 10 because it was so well designed. It's a drafting game. So it's just a small card game, but literally every type of scenario was accounted for in a way that felt really balanced. And the presentation of the game was fantastic. So fast forward to more recent times, there was a Kickstarter for a reprint, which actually turned into a second kind of edition of the game, I suppose, but they added a lot more content for it. And that is Capital Lux 2 Generations. So again, featuring gorgeous art by Kwanchai Moria. I couldn't resist, and I thought the first printing was so fantastic. This one adds new powers, and essentially what makes this game a little more interesting than a typical drafting game is instead of just having set collection, you are playing cards either to your hometown in front of you, which will help you score points, or to a shared capital. And when you play a card to the capital, you are going to get a specific action based on the suit of the card. So some cards may give you coins, which will help you towards your card limit. Some cards will let you draw extra cards. Some cards will give you hidden modifiers that you'll play towards the capital. And then at the end of the round, you have to check to make sure that you essentially like didn't bust. So if there are 10 points worth of pink cards in the capital, if you have 10 or more, or if you have more than 10 in your hometown, you bust and all those cards get discarded. So you don't get to keep them. And additionally, it makes it interesting and really tight and exciting because if you have the most pink cards without busting, you get to take the highest card from the capital and put it into your score pile. So you can score some big points there, but it also resets the capital for the next round. So people are incentivized to play there. And there's a balance of taking cards for yourself versus putting cards that will help everybody, but that give you a little kind of competitive edge. And this is one that, again, was just so fantastic in the base game. I kickstarted Capital Lux 2. I was super excited. And then I was really nervous about opening the box. Usually when I get a game, I open it, organize it, play it as soon as I can. But this is one that was on the shelf because, like I said, 10 is like that ideal that I feel most games can't reach. And the first printing was so perfect in my mind that I'm like, did they muddy it up with a bunch of extra stuff that doesn't really match, that doesn't actually balance out well? And I was really nervous about that. And I saw there was solo play. I'm like, what if the solo play doesn't live up to my expectations? It was a very tumultuous time. However, more recently, actually even within the past couple of weeks, I finally bit the bullet and played the solo game. And I have to say it totally lived up to my expectations of the game being fantastic and being really interesting. So for the solo mode, to compensate for that kind of tight drafting is you have an AI player. You have access to view some of the cards in their deck, as well as a reserve that they will play to try to get as many points into their hometown as possible. So there were some really interesting decisions, and to keep the tension up, there are also times where the AI player will just flip over a card from the top of the deck, and based on the value and the color, will either play it to their hometown or to the capital. So there is still that element of not necessarily knowing everything that the AI opponent has, which I feel is hard to do well. As I said, in Dino World or Paper Tales and games like that, all the information is kind of there for you. But for this one, there's that hidden element of you never know what else could be there. So I think that really captures the idea of drafting against opponents, but puts it into a solo game and just makes it just as exciting and just as nail biting to the very last round as it would be if you were playing with multiple people. So yeah,
wow,
Lux too.
wow, extremely high praise.
Yeah.
Holy cow! So with Capital Lux 2, can you play the base game using Capital Lux 2?
Yes, you
Oh my
absolutely
gosh!
can. So essentially, in addition to there are 4 base game cards that have different powers. So each of the cards in Capital Lux 2 has 5 potential powers, which are indicated by tiles. So you can put them out randomly or choose them to your liking for each game. But 4 of those tiles, 1 for each house, are the original 4 powers in Capital Lux. So this is one that I was so sad because literally that game store had 3 copies of Capital Lux. And like I said, it was the middle of nowhere. I bought it, we played it, we went back, we bought the other 2 copies. So this is such a fantastic game, and it was out of print for so long. So I'm really excited that they were able to kickstart Capital Lux 2. I believe it's available at retail as well in a lot of places. And yeah, it's just such a fantastic game. Like, I'm very, very glad that it's accessible to a lot of people, because this is one that I raved about for I don't even know how long, everywhere and anywhere I could. But then people would be like, but it's not available anywhere. And I'd be like, I know, I'm sorry.
This is so cool. So this is one that you've convinced me. I do want to try it. I love this. Michael Newsome asks if it's an expansion. So it looks to me like it's something like a reworking with expansion content.
Yes.
So something similar to like Coup, I think it's called Coup Rebellion as to regular Coup, where it introduces new roles. But it has that expansion content built into the base game, which is super cool, as Tia just mentioned. Oh my gosh. So, oh, wow. So I'm going to open up my own new tab here with Capital Lux 2 Generations in it. This is exciting. That's so cool. So I'm so happy that it met your expectations. Oh man, what would you have done if it didn't meet your expectations?
I don't know. I mean, I still would have kept it because it's gorgeous and you can still play the base game. I mean, I still have my OG first edition copy as well. Like, very minor thing, but that copy has white borders around the cards and this one has black borders around the cards. And so I just really like the fresh look of the white bordered cards. So I'm like, I'm going to keep both because it's one of my favorite games of all time for sure. So why not have every copy possible? Or every edition possible. But yeah, if it hadn't met my expectations, I think I still would have kept it because it's still like a mind-blowingly amazing game. But so far, so good. I still have a lot of expansion content to try with the different variables. There's also a 5th player edition, so you can play with up to 5 people, whereas the original version only played up to 4. So there's just a lot of stuff that I still have yet to dive into with it, but after trying the solo play and being really, really satisfied, satisfied is an understatement, but being over the moon with how great it was, I'm just like ready to schedule like a game night ASAP and get this to the table again with more people.
That's awesome. So if, just like Dino World, do I have to go through the publisher if I want all the extra stuff? Because I saw there might be metal coins and things like that.
I'm not sure. Like I said, this was one that I felt comfortable kickstarting, which usually I stay pretty far away from, just knowing me and my impulse control. I usually don't even open Kickstarter tabs. But I would assume that from Aporta Games that you can get that stuff. I know that some retailers probably did retail backings as well. So I had seen, I don't know if they're still available, that some of them had some of the like expansions content from the Kickstarter and things like that. But yeah. Even if you can get just, the base, just this without the expansion, fantastic, like well worth the investment. And I think the price point is relatively low as well, since it's primarily a card game with some cardboard components and things like that. So
it's like $15, $20 or so. I actually saw this. It recently hit retail, maybe like a month ago. Yeah. So that's, wow. That's exciting. I've got a tab open. That's exciting. Awesome. Sweet. So that's Tia's number 1, Capital Lux 2, Generations. Oh, wow. Awesome list. Let's go ahead and jump to my number one. This one is also a recently delivered Kickstarter game, and this is going to be a reworking of an old game. I'll kind of tease as well. A reworking of an older game that I was not completely enamored with, but it's one that I have given a lot of love recently, and it's one that I'm just super, super impressed with. It's a great spectacle just to look at. It has this really cool board where it's multi-level, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. The artwork is hilarious and lovely. The gameplay is cinematic in the way it works. It's got two distinct halves to the game, and I think that the theme works extremely well. Any ideas what I'm talking about? It could be pretty much anything, right? So that's pretty vague. So let's go with my number one is Burgle Bros 2, The Casino Capers. So I love this game. I was so impressed. I was so happy. I was learning it. I was like, oh, God, I don't really like the Tim Fowers rule books. They're kind of just bland and boring and just text after text. But I started playing and things started falling into place, and I love it. So Burgle Bros 2, The Casino Capers. This is Ocean's 11, the board game, right? You're going to be assembling a team of people. You can play solo with as many dudes as you want. It's very easy to manage the amount of characters you're playing. And you're taking this team and infiltrating a casino. Your job is to explore the floors of the casino to find out your moles that are inside that are giving you information. These moles are going to give you dice that you're going to be able to use in order to crack the safes. So the safes are on the top floor, but the actual code is on the bottom floor. So you're going to have to split your team up and send one to the top of this board, which is, it's an actual 3D board here. You're going to send one team to the top that's probably going to have to try to find that safe, and one team to the bottom that's going to be siphoning them that information. So it's really cool. The exploration is fun and quick. I love that the interesting events and tiles are tied to new tokens and specific locations as opposed to just being kind of random. So I really enjoy that. I love the AI system in this one. They really streamlined everything. They reduced the amount of floors in the game, so the setup is easier. They also changed up so much here. They changed up the item system. They changed up everything. And it's a completely different game, but with that same familiar core. And I love it. Every change here has been positive. And the best part has to be the finales. So let's see if I can find it here. But the coolest thing here is the way that the game actually ends. So in the middle of the game, you're trying to get into that safe, right? But once you get to the safe, your whole goal is to break into the safe, and inside there's something. And each game, it's going to tell you what is actually inside the safe. So as you can see here, there's a car in this safe. So what happens when you break a car out in the middle of a casino? Now, I'll leave this for you to explore, but every card is like that. So like there might be, I'm not going to say anything because it's crazy. It's a movie. You're like, okay, so I'm going into the safe. The car's in there. What happens next? As soon as you open that safe, you'll flip over this card and it'll tell you how the rest of the scenario plays and what you need to do to escape. And I think that is super cool, super fun, super interesting. I love the way, kind of like with Chronicles Drunagor, it takes the mechanics of the game and it has fun with them. It allows you to explore the different parts of the game. It makes it feel different. And there's a campaign that strings everything together and just makes for an incredible time overall. So I cannot recommend this one enough. This one you can get on the website. Nothing is Kickstarter exclusive, so you can jump in and get everything. And it comes with a game trays insert that works very well. The 3D components are top notch. This is great. I don't think you need the miniatures. I love the charm of the little wooden guys, but everything else is absolutely wonderful. I love this game. I love this game. You're shaking your hands and shaking your head. What do you feel about this one, Tia?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Tim Fowers games in general. I purchased the original Burgle Bros, I think, over the pandemic, and then obviously he announced Burgle Bros 2. So I have the copy. It's one that is on my shelf that I've been burning to play, but it's like on the list and it just hasn't made it quite to the table yet. So I guess I'll have to bump it way up the list now, based on your high words of praise. But I really enjoy the idea. The theming of it is really interesting and exciting. And it, like you said, the art and everything gives it that kind of whimsy to it as well. I know one of my favorite characters in the original game was, I don't know if she had a name, but she had a little pet crow that would kind of scout around. So just little things like that, I think, really give the game a lot of flavor. And it sounds like the Burgle Bros 2 is packed with even more flavor with the specific scenarios of how things react. So that sounds like a really awesome time. And yeah, when I was reading about all the changes that they were making for Burgle Bros 2, I was like, well, the original game is already fantastic. So I'm excited to see, what's next for the second kind of, not even a second edition, but the second, I guess, game in the line of Burgle Bros.
I would say that this is basically the second edition. It's just better in every way, in my opinion. It takes some of the things that were annoying in the last one. It shrinks down the game time, but also adds something more interesting and just better, in my opinion. And all your favorite characters from the original are back. You've got them all here. So Crow is right there, but they're all in new getups because they're infiltrating the casino. So they're actually in casual wear. So I think that's really fun. And the coolest part, I think, with the characters is the characters are even more unique because each character comes with their own set of equipment. And this equipment, you can, as an action, you can prep equipment and you can take it in, but you know what equipment you have. And in addition to that, each equipment after you use it flips over and has another use on the back that you can use as you're playing. So it's got that multi-use you enjoy, but with this super solid sound system, this game is great. Open it up, learn it, play it, put it on the table first and learn as you play. I think that's the best way probably on this one. It was a little weird to kind of read it beforehand, but if you're familiar with Burgle Bros, then this will be great for you, I think. So that's my number one, Burgle Bros 2, The Casino Capers. So, sweet, awesome. So that's the list. That's our top 10, 5 and 5 of our favorite games that we've been loving right now. So these are all new games that we've just really enjoyed, and we both have tabs open for potential things that we're going to be buying soon. But having a blast here. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. But before we close up, Tia, I want to know, are there any games that you have on your shelf that you are super excited to jump into? Maybe things that you're anticipating playing.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, now Burgle Bros 2, obviously. Have to start with that, which is really exciting. I know while I was doing some research over like quarantine times, I'd heard, I'm a big fan of Abyss, and I had heard that there is a solo variant up on Board Game Geek for it, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet, but I'm really excited to try that. I know I'm really excited that publishers are taking on putting more solo variants into games or making them solo compatible. But I know that there's a bunch of fantastic people on Board Game Geek as well who just kind of are really big fans of certain games and take the liberty to, come up with a solo mode that they can share with everybody. So I'm always looking for those as well and going back through my collection of games I already own and seeing, what's what. So I'm really excited to try that. I know one of the games that I do have not yet on my shelf, but that should be hopefully coming sometime soon is the Kickstarter for Mini Rogue, which was another print and play. This one is actually only a 9-card game, and it's one that I used to play a lot on lunch breaks. It is high fantasy, dungeon crawler. It's got really awesome art. And it was one that I was just enamored with because I thought, 18 cards. How can you make a game out of 18 cards? That's amazing. And then this one was only 9 cards. And I'm like, wait, and it's a dungeon crawler? How do you do that? There's no way. But this is one that I really enjoyed as a print and play. So, of course, when they put it on Kickstarter with more content to support up to 2 players cooperatively or competitively and expansions, I was all in. So this one is anticipated, I think, to be coming sometime soon. And yeah, it's one that I'm just so excited. I know that's one that when I get it, I'll open it, play it right away, probably ad nauseum, and force everybody to come and play it with me now that you can play with 2.
That's excellent. Awesome. So for me, also a couple of games that I've gone all in on. I was recently traveling, so I just got back from my honeymoon, actually. And so while I've been gone, we had a bunch of packages come. And some of these packages have solo modes built into them. And oh my gosh, I am so excited to jump into these. I'm waiting on some sleeves for a couple of them. I just finally unpacked a bunch of the stuff. But one of the games for sure that I want to talk about is a Hulk of a game. I'm not going to lift up the whole thing, but I'll hold up the box. This is Solomon Kane. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I have. It's another one that I had to quickly close my laptop and be like, no, just wait a bit to see how it is. And yeah.
This Kickstarter is 4 years old. I remember seeing it and being like, this looks really neat. But at that time, I was like, SideGame wasn't a thing during that time. So I was like, this seems a little expensive. I don't know if I want to jump in on this. But the more I heard about it, the longer the development took, the better and more refined the game seemed to get. So I was luckily they're on their website. They have available copies of Solomon Kane. they might be out of stock now, but they had available copies. Game Steward also has all-in copies if you want to do something there. But they have it available, and this is just this huge storytelling game. So I love that style, but the way this is set up is it's not a dungeon crawl. It's more of like a dice placement game, which seems really interesting, and you're using the dice to power your actions. And I just think that is super fun, and it's very cinematic. That's very what's the word I use to describe Burgle Bros 2? Cinematic. Very cinematic. It's very cinematic. You're playing through basically stories from the Solomon Kane universe, and each of those just looks super fun. So that's one that I am super excited for. The other one is a lot smaller, and this is going to be Fleet the Dice Game. So Fleet the Dice Game looks adorable, super cute. I got it on the table here ready to go. So hopefully after this, I'll be able to give it a try. Oh, you've got it. Hey, nice. Is it quality?
Yep. Yeah, this was one too that a friend had recommended to me for a long time. It was his favorite roll and write, and he's someone who I hold in high regard in terms of his taste in games. And he also loves solo gaming, so he was someone that I connected with earlier on when I was first getting a little bit more into solo gaming. And this was the one he recommended, but it was out of print for so long. So I was really glad when they decided to do a reprint with the mini expansions and everything. But yeah, definitely like just open this one up and start playing it.
It's on the table, ready to go. So I'm after this, that's what I'm jumping into. So that's the other one. And the last one is another gigantic game, even bigger than Solomon Kane. And this is going to be Midara, Unintentional Malum Act 1. So I've heard nothing but good things about this. The dice system is fun. The customization is fun. The world is fun. And this game just seems incredible. So it's all organized and ready to go, but got to give it a try to see if it's actually good. Oh, man. With these big ones, I really hope they're good, because if they're not, oh, it sucks so hard.
Right. Yeah, that's always like it's like a push your luck, right? Where I'm like, oh man, it looks so cool. But yeah, I think for me, like the biggest one I had kickstarted was Dark Souls, because it's my favorite IP of all time. And there were a lot of mixed reviews about it, and rightfully so, but they did come up with a dungeon crawl variant that is really tailored to board gaming, which definitely cleans up a lot of the stuff that people complained about. But yeah, that's me as well. I always feel weird about going into a big Kickstarter, especially if it's for solo play, because I do play a lot of games solo, but we also try to game with friends and things. So it's like, oh man, this huge game, it's like everything I want, but I don't know. It's hard to pull the trigger and convince other people to get on board as well. But
so Michael, he's reassured me here that it's very good. Oh, thank goodness, Michael. I appreciate it. Thank you for making me feel a little bit better about this. But it was the second printing of it, so I figured that if it's that good, and if the second one is doing this well, it's probably a great game. And the reviews came in. So that one I felt a little bit more safe on. Solomon Kane was a little bit more iffy. Fleet also was another like surefire hit.
Right,
Everybody loves that one. And oh man, I'm so excited. This is just, oh man, talking about all these makes me excited for games. I got to go check out the Garden game. I got to go check out the Capital Lux 2. I have all these little tiny games. This is perfect. Awesome.
Yeah. And I'll be looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Midara and Solomon Kane as well, because again, those big box games. I'm always like, ooh, I want it, but I shouldn't. That's not something I should do on an impulse, you know, like a button shy game on an impulse, usually pretty safe, you know. But yeah. And by your recommendation, I mean, you know, your enablement of my ad.
If somebody said it's good, it's okay, right? Like,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, Michael Newsom, he's approved you to buy it right now. He said it's very good. That's like the soundest advice. Yeah, that's great. You don't need to talk to, you know, anybody else or consult bank accounts or anything. It's all good. Awesome. Anything else before we close? Tia, can you remind people again where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube or Instagram at Tikyjo. That's Tikyjo. Again, just a lot of solo content, and I always welcome people. I'm on Board Game Geek under the same name in case you want to, snoop around and see what I'm playing. I update my plays regularly and my collection regularly and things, and feel free to reach out directly as well. I, prior to getting into board gaming, was not on any form of social media, but it's just such an awesome community of people, and I always enjoy talking to new people and hearing their thoughts on games. So yeah, definitely feel free to come join me on any of those platforms and say hi.
Awesome. And before we do close, if anybody has any questions, let's go ahead and put those in the comments if you have. Once again, SideGame is in the process of moving right now, so things are a little bit iffy with hosting game nights. But we are still going to be producing content. We still have things coming up, like, for example, this awesome live stream. And I really do want to thank Tikyjo for meeting us this morning. I know times were a little iffy, and things were a little bit hard to get going, but it worked out wonderfully. Great lists, lots of great recommendations of games, even our little side tangents I thought were fun. But I'll keep it up for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
See if anybody else has any questions or anything. But yeah, anything else you want to share? Any other gaming things that have been going on in the world of Tia?
Well, for sure. I just want to say again, thanks for having me on. I was really surprised when you reached out and really excited, again, being so new to the platform as well. I was just like, oh my gosh. And then, of course, being able to talk about games, always just like, it's like Christmas every day over here. So thank you again for having me on. And yeah, I don't know. There's so many good games. Oh, I'll say another game that I'm really looking forward to coming out. I don't know when, because I technically didn't back it, but someone backed it. And it's a gift. Like, it's this weird thing. I don't know if anybody else has this problem of like having friends, and even my partner is really into gaming. So we always have to do this thing where we're like, I got you this thing, but I need to make sure that you're not going to buy it. So we have to like kind of run things by each other. Otherwise we get into trouble. But Set a Watch. I believe that there's a new standalone edition of it coming out that I'm really excited for. That's another one that's cooperative but plays excellent solo, and it's got that high fantasy kind of like dark theme with really cool art. I talked about it in my top 10 list just, I think, was it last week? I don't know. It's hard for me to keep track of time, but that's one that I've really enjoyed, and I know they're adding a lot more content to it for the second printing, or the second like installment of it.
I believe it's the expansion, right? It adds like items and things like that. Sword of the Coin. There it is, the Outriders expansion.
Right.
So this is one that I have played. A friend of mine also has this, so it was one of those where it's like, oh, you've got it, I can play it when I'm with you. So, but it's cool. I do like this one. You've got that little party of adventurers, and you're just constantly have that threat of the darkness coming after you. So I like that a lot.
Right. Yeah, it's a really fun, almost in a way, tower defense style game, which I really enjoy as well. So that's really exciting. So many good games.
So it looks like we don't have any burning questions here. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the stream now. But thank you so much, Tia, for being here. It was a blast. And if anybody does have any comments in the future, definitely leave them in the comments of the video. We'll make sure those get answered. Tia and I will be kind of roaming around and answering questions if you have anything for us. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Tia, for being here. This was a great list, great time. And thank you so much for watching. SideGame strong, everybody. Bye.
Bye.